It's December, I've got my coffee, it's time for the last Q&A of 2024. Let's get to it.
This video is brought to you by Model Railroad Academy. Model Railroad Academy is your online resource for model railroad instructions, ideas, and information, with loads of tutorials and articles for model railroaders of every skill level. One of my personal favorites is Alan Keller's Great Model Railroads series. It is just so much fun to look at all of these different model railroads from all of these different great model railroaders and just get inspiration from those. Plus, you can find tutorials on everything from bench work to electronics to scenery, all sorts of things there. The first 1,000 people to sign up at the link in the description below will get a full year of premium membership to Model Railroad Academy for $1.49.
Hey everybody, my name's Jimmy. Welcome to Coffee and Train. Today I'm drinking some Colombian Supremo coffee from Members Mark, which is Sam's Club, so some store brand coffee. If you want to tell me what kind of coffee you are drinking and have it featured just like these guys right here, you can do that in the comments below, and who knows, you might see your name pop up on an episode of Coffee and Trains. Also, this is the monthly Q&A where I answer some of your questions. I'll tell you at the end of the video how to get your names and your questions on to the next Q&A. Cheers, guys. Eric P3D says he's just now looking into model trains. If you were starting today and you had about $250 to get going, what would you consider the best bang for your buck? That's tough. So he is talking in inscale. What I would say is honestly a Kato starter set. Kato has so much expansion you can do. So if you're starting out, get a starter set. Bachmann makes good starter sets. Kato just has all these expansion packs and everything for track, so you can add stuff on. If you want to add a yard, buy a yard pack. If you want to add a double loop, add the outer or inner loop pack. But a Kato starter set is going to get you a good power pack. It's going to get you a locomotive that's easy to upconvert to DCC. It's going to give you some nice rolling stock and things like that. And it's going to give you a good base. And Unitrack is, in my opinion, the best system out there with pre-attached road bed for N and HO scale. So really the best bang for your buck is going to be about one of the $200 Kato starter sets. Looking at those, the freight starter sets. They have a variety of them, like the Amtrak one that I have, but that's really what I would look at. M. Pearson 9238 asks if I ever made a warranty claim on my locomotives. Yes, I have. I made a warranty claim on my Broadway Limited Big Boy 4023, the gray fantasy paint scheme. It actually, I think it was technically my fault. It snagged on some scenery and one of the drive rods came loose, and I had still relatively new, so I was able to send it in. It did take a little while to get it back, but they fixed it, didn't charge me anything, and sent it right back. It was under warranty. Cannibal Chow asks, is it better to have pre-wired or manual throw switches for DCC and inscale? And he says he knows that Kato switches can tend to be a bit finicky with that. They can. I haven't had too many issues. They're not really that bad. I've opened one up and taken a look at it, and the bottom line is that the power versus manual issue is completely independent of the track power. So what you're really looking at here is the mechanism for a Kato Unitrack turnout. Basically just has a little magnet, and you reverse the polarity, you send a charge, and it throws that magnet back and forth, and that's what causes it to switch back and forth. And that is basically what you get there. So that the manual versus automatic question is really just depending on what you do. If I'm going to wire up like a signal to go with it with an Arduino, I'm going to do it as a wired up switch. Most of the time I keep my Kato switches manual. They have a nice little manual throw that's really easy to do. And if you're not using that and you're using inscale and you're using, let's say, like some like set numbered switches like 4s, 5s, 6, 7s and all those, definitely look at something like a Caboose ground throw. That's going to make it easier to manually throw your switches. CYFS Kid says they're looking to get into DCC and they have one, and they're looking at the Hornby Elite, and it's the only DCC controller they can get there in New Zealand. Kia ora, by the way. I love New Zealand. Spent a few months there. And they said that if they got the Digitrax one there, it'd be about $1,500, and they're not willing to pay that. Completely understandable. So what I would actually look at is DCC-EX. This is a DIY system that you can completely build yourself. I've done videos on it. It's really not that complicated to build. As long as you have, let's say, an Android or iPhone, you can run that. So what it is basically it's an Arduino or an Arduino clone, a motor shield, and some sort of Wi-Fi shield. I'll put my original video linked at the end of this video, but you can order all those parts directly as clones from China, and that should get you going. Definitely look into that. If not, I would definitely look into Hornby and all of that kind of stuff. Just make sure that the standards of the DCC system are the same as your locomotives, whether it's NMRA or NER, I think is the European one. So, but NMRA compliant is typically the one that most people go for. So just make sure on that. But a DCC EX system could potentially save you a ton of money because you can order the parts dirt cheap and just build it yourself. Stephen Aragon 3182 asks about applying a matte clear craft spray to protect material. So I don't do it like over my entire layout. What I do is typically my the glue process of seeping in and everything tends to lock stuff in pretty well. Obviously, you have to treat it like it's a model scene. It's not going to hold up to being, manhandled all over the place. But one place that I will put matte clear finishes, if I'm doing road lines and I'm doing like striped road lines, I'll use like a Mod Podge matte to coat over it to keep it in place and protect it, because those can get damaged really easily and it's really obvious and noticeable, and they're really a pain to repair once you get them down. So I will do a matte finish with Mod Podge, not a spray, but usually I do a brush over road decals. That's the main one that I do. But in terms of scenery, no, I'll just usually try to soak it with a bunch of glue, and that makes it really, really tough and hard for most modeling needs. Ethan Andrews 1230 says, question for you. Are you going to answer this question? Yes. Sam's 2960 says, how do you unstick a stuck Kato turnout, scenery or glue? It works manually but struggles to work at all with the remote motor unless I manually flip it a bunch of times and loosen it. Well, that's kind of how you have to do it. If it's stuck, I will tell you that you can open up a Kato turnout, but the parts tend to fall apart really easily. So you just want to be very mindful of that if you're doing that. But in terms of that, a little bit of water is going to do the best for breaking up scenery glue, and that's what the kind of stuff is. The thing is, you have to be able to suck it out, so maybe a pipette or something like that, because there is literally no circuitry right there at the throw. It's just a piece of plastic that goes there, and there's just barely a tiny printed circuit board that just swaps the power routing connections for the turnout. So that's the main thing. But a number 4 turnout's going to be a bit more complicated because you have the power routing settings, but a number 6 should be fairly easily. Water is the one thing that breaks up scenery glue the best. I would just be very careful, and you may have to open up your Kato turnout. And then at that point, you need to look and say, is this worth all this trouble, or do I need to spend the money and just replace it and get a new one? So it just depends on how in your scenery it is. Michael H. Massey 1247 asks, who had the yellow and gray paint scheme first, Union Pacific or Milwaukee Road? Well, Union Pacific did, because Milwaukee Road adopted the paint scheme when Union Pacific started running on their lines. Red Coyote 15 asks, could you use an inscale DCC decoder for a small HO scale locomotive? Yes, you can. I have done this before with a DN126. I think it's a Digitrax decoder. I also know that on small 00 locomotives like Hornby that they use Next 18 decoders in some of them. So yes, you can. You just have to look at the amperage and what its max amperage is going to be, because that's going to govern how much you can use and what decoders you can use if you're doing like a full custom install. RS64 asks, does blami have in-scale decoders? Not yet. I'm kind of hoping they come out with them in the future. I think that they'll be really cool. Keg1029 asks the best way to model below track details for scenery that isn't just straight, or should you just use one of the bridge modules out there? So yes, there are modules out there that have a drop. One of my modules for Rural Haul actually has a drop in, and you can put foam in it. Klawndyke makes one that just has the wood where the track is and then has a 1-inch drop. So yes, you can do that, and I'll put a link to that Klawndyke module in the description below. But yes, you can do that. I think he makes a single and a double of those. So I plan on using some of those in a future expansion. I've already got them, I just haven't built them yet. WMJ Well asked about printing out water slide decals. He wants to do a special card to honor a member of his model railroad club who's been with the club for 35 years. And yes, you can print out water slide decals. The only thing is, unless you have a really expensive printer, which is really hard to get, you cannot print white on water slide decals. It just doesn't work that way because you don't have white ink in most inkjet printers. But as long as you are not doing white or relying on the white for a color, like let's say yellow, so let's say like if you want to do like black or blue or red or those darker colors, yes, you can do it on an inkjet printer. Barconius asks, if I ever got a larger space, would I go to a larger scale? That's a tough question because to get what I want in HO scale, I'd probably have to have a basement to switch to HO scale completely. I'm probably going to have some HO scale stuff in like a small HO scale layout, but inscale really allows me to have the more immersive scenes that I really like in model railroading, and that's really why I do it. It's worth it for the smaller stuff and being able to build these scenes where I can see like more into it rather than just the track and a little bit to the left and the right. So that is really what I like to see, is like just the bigger scenes. So it would take a really big space, but I'm not going to completely rule it out because as I get older, I may just decide to go to a larger scale. But right now, I probably wouldn't, but I'm not going to rule it out completely. Nobody Built That ask, how can we grow or keep this hobby going? How can we usher in the new generation of model railroaders? Well, it's actually kind of already happening. If you look at it in like technicalities, like I'm technically the newer generation of model railroaders. I am a millennial. I'm 36 right now. So what I have noticed the most is that model railroaders tend to be really big into trains when they're kids. And then teenage years happen. We're distracted by all sorts of stuff. 20s can happen, and sometimes you're just trying to figure out your life. And a lot of people come back to the hobby in their 30s or their late 20s. So there's a little bit of a gap there, and then people will come back to the hobby when they remember what it was like. It's what I did. It's what I've seen a lot of people do. But even then, I've seen more and more people continuing the hobby in their teens and 20s than they used to. And that is because of the advent of shelf layouts and switching layouts. You see, model railroading is really pivoting away from the loop of track and cramming everything into a table where you can, into more of you're modeling a scene, you may be modeling an industry. You know, if you have 6 feet of spare space, you can have an HO scale layout. It can be a small one, but you can have an HO scale switching layout, and you can have a lot more in scale. So the model railroad hobby is growing and changing. It's got a really big following online. There's a lot there. It's still one of the bigger niche hobbies, but it's definitely there, and it's still growing. And I think the biggest evidence of this is how many modern diesels are coming out from manufacturers. They wouldn't be making these if people like me and other model railroaders weren't buying them. There's a lot of older people who buy them and do modern model railroading, but you tend to model the era that you really grew up and got hooked on your love of trains in. That's why you see like a lot of older guys doing those 1950s, 60s, and 70s. You see that. Then you got kind of the middle generation of model railroaders, Gen Xers doing the 80s and the 90s. And then you have my generation, which likes doing the 2000s. And then you're going to have generations that do the 2010s, 2020s, and who knows what's going to come in the 2030s. But you're seeing a lot of that. So look at what the manufacturers are making. They're going to make a good mix. You're still going to have a lot of like the old steam engines because those are always popular. You're going to have the F units. Those are just a mainstay you're always going to see. But look at what the higher end manufacturing is, and you're going to see more moderns. That's why you see so many Gevos coming out. So I think that as long as we keep chatting and talking on social media and I'm doing videos like this and all that kind of stuff. And also if you look at places like all the short form video that's going on right now, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and all that kind of stuff, you see a lot of younger model railroaders there. And there's a lot of them that are actually interested in O scale and Lionel too. So you see that as well. So it's not a matter of keeping it going, it's just keeping the growth that's going on right now, because it's heading into a new golden age with a lot of availability, smaller, more boutique manufacturers making nicer products. So That's really where it's going right now. All right, if you have a question that you would like answered in next month's Q&A, the first Q&A of 2025, you can leave that in the comments below, and you might see your question answered there. I do try to get to as many as I can. But I typically try to cut it off after the first week and then start to record, because I like to record in advance just to give me a little bit of extra time to do stuff. So thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading. My coffee's gone cold.